My mom grew up in a farming family. And still to this day, I have an uncle who just retired from farming in northwest Minnesota, and an aunt who runs a community sponsored agriculture and is doing regenerative farming, and a cousin who lives up in Bellingham and he runs his own community sponsored agriculture. So I hear this story and I think the sower is doing it wrong. Because now, when you want to go out and you plant some seeds, you have already programmed your field into your GPS, into your large machinery, and it carefully calculates exactly where each seed should go. And you know your soil is good soil because you have carefully prepared your soil to make sure that no seed is wasted, because seeds are expensive. And so thinking about this sower, just like, I don't know, just maybe here, it seems like not a great idea, like a little foolish. Unless this sower is maybe used to being surprised. Unless this sower has seen unexpected things grow in unexpected places. I'll be honest, even with all that lovely farming pedigree that I have, this was also me as a gardener. Just, I don't know, I went to the gardening store and I thought, yeah, sure, I'll look on the back, and there's all this information about zones and shade and soil, and I looked at it and was like, I don't know what this means. So I just bought some plants. I was like, I don't know, I'll just throw them in there. We'll see how it goes. I had 2 raised beds. My last church had a parsonage, and so I had 2 raised beds in the back, and I just got a whole bunch of stuff, and I just said, we'll just see what happens. And I figured I'd learn as I went. And learn I did. I got peppers and eggplants. And it turns out when your growing season starts in June and ends in early October, that's not long enough to grow peppers or eggplants. And I got some that were about this big. And I just say, well, that's that. I'm not doing that again. I got cucumbers and zucchini. And unsurprisingly, the problem of having too much zucchini is universal. Always going to happen. I got some flowers. I learned that marigolds protect against insects. And on a whim, I got some lavender, which smelled very pretty. I don't know if you know anything about lavender, but if you do, you knew more than I did when I bought it. It's a Mediterranean plant. It's hardy up to zone 5. It grows about 3 feet across, and it requires care over cold winters. I lived in northern Wisconsin, which is zone 4, so too cold. I planted them. I got 4. I planted 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, because I thought it made a cute little diamond pattern, but definitely not enough room. And I planned to do something with them over the winter. They looked very nice in the summer. And then it snowed in October. And I was like, well, I guess I overwintered them. They're covered now, I guess. We'll see what happens. And you know what? It came back. It looked dead, and then they started growing. I will be honest, not all 4 of them came back, but 2 of them flourished. And then the next year, they came back again, and they continued to grow. If I had been a logical gardener, I would have looked at my not sandy soil in my very northern climate, and I would have never bought lavender. There was no way it was going to make it. But because I was a foolish gardener, I was surprised. In our gospel today, Jesus demonstrates that he has also been a foolish gardener. If you wanted to start a religious movement in a logical way, you'd want to find people with money and power and influence to support you. You'd want to take your message and your miracles to people who could make a difference and convince others to follow you. And that's not what Jesus does at all. He just flings out his good news and his healing and his teaching for everyone, knowing that it won't always take root, but then when it does, it will flourish. And so here in this little passage in Luke, we find out something very surprising. I'm gonna read from it exactly here. It's hard to tell in English because in English, words are not gendered, but in Greek, they are. And so it says, um, we've got Mary and Joanna and Susanna and many others who provided for them out of their resources. And the others and their resources, those are feminine words. So Jesus, his ministry is being bankrolled by women here. Who is, if I was in first century Palestine, that is not what I would be expecting at all. Had he kept the good news and the teaching to the logical recipients, he would have missed out on this upswelling of support in an unusual place. Well, for me, in my garden, it was maybe foolishness. I think for Jesus, it is love that helps him to not see rocky soil, thorny soil, bad soil, and good soil. But he sees potential soil, potential soil, potential soil. And maybe the seeds will fall and never sprout, but maybe they will fall and grow something surprising, like a formerly demon-possessed woman who stays with Jesus even when the other 12 have abandoned him and becomes the first one to proclaim the good news of the resurrection. I don't want to talk for Pastor Chuck or Pastor Susan, but I'll be honest, for me, ministry feels a little bit like gardening again. I don't quite know what will grow, what will flourish. Faith formation has changed from 100 years ago, 50 years ago. It's changed from when I was in Sunday school or confirmation or high school. It's changed even from 2019. It feels a little foolish to experiment, like maybe I should go with tried and true, but there aren't any zones or shade guidelines. The climate has changed. And though we don't quite like to admit it, I think we have to say that it's true that investing money in a church, an organization with a lot of overhead expenses in one of the least religious states in the nation, in a time when fewer and fewer people identify as Christian, much less Lutheran, in this post-pandemic chaotic time, seems maybe not very logical. But we've already established that I'm not very logical. And so I look at Messiah and I just see a whole bunch of potential soil. So I talked it over with Ginny. And even though we've already turned in our pledge for stewardship this year, we've actually increased our pledge by $10 a week, which maybe doesn't sound a whole lot in the context of our budget, which is much larger than my last church's budget, but it's still $520 a year. And $500 is what I just budgeted for an all-ages mini mission trip this year. And it's what I budgeted for high school activities. And it's what I budgeted for maybe a few other experiments that might turn out not to grow in this soil, but maybe will grow beyond my wildest expectations. And if I have just a few more things that I can stick in the ground, that's a few more times that I can maybe be surprised by the work that God is doing here in this place. I don't know if I'd say I'm expecting the unexpected, but I'm hopeful because I've been surprised before, and I hope that I will be again because I know that the soil has changed, but God has not. God's steadfast love endures forever. Thanks be to God.